our Sunday sitting group, which is still at InsightLA, and we'll also be at InsightLA next week as well. After that, I'm not quite so sure, but we'll know by next week. My name is Trudy, and I'm speaking to you from the unceded lands of the Tongva indigenous people who took care of and lived for thousands of years on this land where we are today. And it's become a kind of tradition to do a land acknowledgement, an indigenous land acknowledgement at the beginning of our teachings. And so today I wanted to share with you, whoops, I can't find my notes, I'll go get them. Today I want to share with you some teachings that actually derive from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition on the bardo. Bardo, by definition, is a space where we aren't where we were, but we're not yet where we're going. And so there's lots of, traditionally it's understood in a very limited way to mean the space between when one has died and one's consciousness then takes another form. But we can look at so many different dimensions of this teaching. And I like it for us right now because InsightLA is in a bardo. It's not clear really what's going to happen. So it just felt, and therefore so am I and many of the other teachers, and it just felt appropriate to explore this today. So and for those of you who might be, Liz is asking me to be louder. I usually ask you how you all can hear me. Let me just check my Zoom audio and make sure it's the output. Yeah, the output volume is really up. I will go get my AirPods and maybe that will help. So in the meantime, who is new to InsightLA today? Okay, welcome. So our time is divided roughly into thirds, where we meditate first, then we have some teachings, and then some time for dialogue together. And roughly half hour. And then there are, I don't know, are there going to be breakout groups today, Anissa?
Sure, if you like.
And then we usually have small groups. We end formally at Pacific time, 12:30. I know many of you are on different time zones. And then you don't turn off your Zoom, but you come back in 10 minutes or so, and Zoom and Anissa will put you in your breakout groups. So I will be, I'll be right back with my AirPods. But in the meantime, let's start the sitting together. We begin by taking 3 deep cleansing breaths, breathing consciously, a deep breath in and releasing. And one more time, breathing in the aliveness of this moment. And releasing any tension in the body as you breathe out. One more deep breath in. And relaxing on the out breath. I do a little bit of guided meditation, but for now, just let your breath move in its own natural rhythm. Resting the attention gently on the movement of the breath in the body. And when you notice that the mind has wandered away into the past, whatever came before this moment, or into the future, whatever may follow, again, just very gently coming back to this moment, this particular moment. This breath, this sensation, whatever sounds may be happening around you. If you notice any sleepiness or dullness, just bring a little more attention to the in-breath. And if the mind is busy and very, very active, just bring slightly more attention to the out breath, the calming, relaxing, releasing breath. And noticing how the present moment dissolves. How each breath appears, has its being, and vanishes. The same is true of thoughts and feelings. Each thought, each emotion appears, it's born in the space of awareness and then passes away. Nothing needs to be done. You simply dwell in mindful awareness as each thought, feeling, breath, moment is born, has its being, and vanishes. Just bringing relaxed attention to the movement of the breath, to the movement of life, so that meditation is enjoyable. And I want to invite you to do a kind of reflection as you sit or lie down or stand, whatever frame your body is in. And to just imagine that this is the last day that you have to live. And this is the last meditation that you will have to do. And just see what it's like. Maybe discovering a great freedom. Maybe you'll uncover a sense of, well, let's see what you uncover. This is it. Just being here together on the ground of being. This is it. So if you feel like it, you could put in the chat what you discovered if you decided to do that reflection of this being maybe the last meditation that you would do on the last day of your life. Yeah, just feel free to put anything you might have discovered um, in the chat. I find it's very powerful to imagine that this is the only moment. I mean, it's not imagination. This is the only moment that we have to live because the past has dissolved and the future is nebulous and not here yet. And it's just flowing all the time. I want to share with you some of the teachings from Bardo Retreat with my beloved friend, Anam Tupten. And he used the analogy of that life is like a train trip, and we're on this train. We're sort of cosmic travelers, on this train, and it just it never stops. And it's very romantic, maybe, to think of taking a train ride that never stops. There's something kind of magical about that. It just goes on and on and on. And he encouraged us to think of our life like this, and that our life goes on and on and on, and or some kind of consciousness continues. And this is, of course, a huge mystery. And who knows? I remember before I practiced the Dharma, I was really young. I had just had a baby. I was, I think, 21, 22. I was just playing with my cousin with a Ouija board. Do you remember Ouija boards? Um, so I was playing with a Ouija board, and my aunt had died recently, and I was sad, and I asked the Ouija board to ask Aunt Betty, like, what happens after you die? She had just died. And the Ouija board said, life goes on and on and on. It spelled things out. You put your fingers on the little thingy, and then it said life goes on and on and on. That was very mysterious to me. It still is, actually. But in a way, Anam Tupten was saying just what the Ouija board said in some way, that life goes on and on and on. And, we meet people in the train station, we meet each other, they become our friends or companions for a while. Just like, when you're traveling, especially when you're young, when you're traveling and you just meet people and then you just go off on an adventure with them. Imagine our whole life is like this. It's something we can really imagine, and also to be a little more maybe serious about it. It feels like the whole world is in a bardo right now. That partly because of the pandemic, and maybe the war in Ukraine and other things that are happening. That the world is in the bardo, and the bardo brings a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unknown, because, as I said before, wherever we've been has dissolved. It's not there anymore. InsightLA, the way it was, in the form that it was, is over. As I said, I think a couple of weeks ago, was a success that has ended now. And what will be reborn or what will come next is uncertain. The younger generation is getting together and seeing, can InsightLA continue as a volunteer, basically mostly volunteer-based organization? This is what people are going to be exploring in the next couple weeks. But it's a bardo of uncertainty. We really don't know. And if we're honest, any moment of our life is like that. We have the bardo of going to sleep at night, of falling asleep. There are practices to do to try and maintain awareness, actually, even in sleep. I don't know if any of you have had lucid dreams or done practices to encourage lucid dreams. That is to say, dreams where you're dreaming in the dream. There's awareness of it being a dream in the dream. And oh, Lenny, before you leave, I just want to say we're going to change it to an hour earlier. So it's going to be an hour earlier. And that's, that's in honor of you and other people in Europe for whom it's late to do it at 11 Pacific time. So we're going to be moving to 10 o'clock Pacific time. And I think that will begin next week when Thomas Davis is coming to teach, because I will be in the Spirit Rock Teachers Retreat next weekend, which is also with Anam Tupten, interestingly enough. So there's a lot of uncertainty whenever we find ourselves in any bardo. I mean, I remember a prayer from when I was little. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Maybe some of you did that prayer before you went to sleep. I don't think my Jewish parents taught me that prayer, but I had a lot of friends. My very best friend was extremely Christian. She had a picture of Jesus and his lambs on her bed table. I was very envious. I wanted to have this beautiful, blonde, blue-eyed, white Jesus with the lambs in my life when I was little. But we go to sleep. We don't know. The state of deep sleep is it's completely unconscious, right? All our sense organs have shut down. And yeah, deeply, deeply asleep. And of course, there are practices that can be done to try to sustain awareness through the process of falling asleep. And I know I certainly do not have access to this in my everyday life, but when I have been in long, silent meditation retreat, I've had the experience of being asleep and being aware of it at the same time. It's unusual because that's not how we usually are. But these teachings about the transitions and the phases and the liminal phases, like that phase of falling asleep, when we bring awareness to more and more of our life, more and more of these states of consciousness and being, it just helps us. It helps us handle the uncertainty that is actually part of every moment of our lives. I was sitting here, when was the week we were supposed to have had some big hurricane in LA, which of course didn't really ever happen that way in the West. I think in Palm Springs and other places, they had a lot of weather, really big weather. We just had a lot of rain. But in the midst of it, I remember sitting there and the apartment started to shake. We were having an earthquake. It was a mild earthquake here. But when it starts shaking, you don't know it's going to be mild. You don't know what kind of earthquake it is. So, the new direction of our life is not clear in those moments. Is it going to sort of go back to normal, that which is familiar? Will it never be the same? We don't know. We don't know. And so we need the wisdom to be able to go through these different stages of life without falling into fear and confusion about it. And this is why we're studying these teachings. This is why we try to live our life on the path of mindfulness and loving kindness, so that we can find freedom in all the situations. So yes, falling asleep is a bardo. Being asleep is a bardo. Waking up in the morning. What do you do when you wake up in the morning? You probably go to the bathroom. Maybe you brush your teeth. And then there's the moment of going in the kitchen, that bardo, and making your tea or coffee. Anam Tupten called that, he said, that's a magical moment when you get to go in the kitchen and make your tea or coffee and enjoy it. I don't know about you, I love to eat, so breakfast is a magical moment of pleasure. Getting to have breakfast. Maybe you meditate a little beforehand, hopefully. And hopefully you don't enter the bardo of your device before you do those things, because you can get really lost in there and never get to the meditation part, right? So as we did in the meditation today, looking at sort of the how each breath, each moment,
each thought, each feeling is born and has its being and passing away. What are we doing? We're studying the birth and death of experience. And why do we study the birth and death of experience? We do this because someday we will also be contemplating, if we're lucky and it's not some very sudden thing or, God forbid, violent thing, we will be contemplating our own death. And that's really, it's just hard to imagine saying farewell to this life that no matter how challenging it may be, we feel there's something good about it continuing, right? We want it to continue. Um, so these teachings, they really extend to this sense of the ongoing journey that we're on that never really stops. But they also have to do with, these moments, the breakfast, the meditation. Then there's the bardo of going to work, whether that means, opening your computer at home or getting in the car and going to an office or a studio or wherever you work. And we can look at the day, just every activity is like a segment of time. And every segment of time then dissolves and makes room for the next segment of time that we're going through all day long like that. And it's kind of mysterious, actually, when we look at it that way. We realize we only know like one little segment of our life at a time. And, there's an expression I always have found really encouraging in the 12 steps, one day at a time. But when you're a meditator, you're actually practicing one moment at a time, not just one day at a time. And, these periods of the bardo of dinner, the bardo of after dinner. What is it after dinner? Is it Netflix? Is it reading books? What is the bardo of after dinner for you? Is it more meditation? And then the end of each day and that bardo of sleep and dreaming. It's really, when I think of the day like this, it becomes much more interesting, actually. Instead of this kind of solid lump, how was your day? Have a great day. Instead of this solid lump, it becomes, oh my gosh, all these different activities moving in and moving out and having them appear and then disappear. And then it's just this kaleidoscope of mysterious being that we take for granted. So I'm curious, I'm going to look in the chat and see, what did you put in terms of anything that you might have uncovered? Yes. So Clark was saying first there was sadness and weeping because of being in love with this planet, the earth, the community I love and enjoy and get frustrated with. Yes, yes, yes. And CJ was saying at first there's a sadness and then an urgency to tabulate all the things I didn't do or accomplish. And then eventually a subtle peace about it that surprised me, almost as if whether or not I accomplished those things, that final frontier is upon me nonetheless. And I took it as an invitation to release all that, inviting and not needing to do, and just decided to keep walking. Yes, these are both very beautiful realizations and insights. And I remember when I was young, a young friend was dying of melanoma. And, we were all so curious, like, what is it like? What's it like to be dying? We were young. And she said, well, I had these things that I wanted to do in my life, and it wasn't even a bucket list. She was too young for a bucket list. These were just goals that she had for her life. And there were these, I can't remember the content, but there were three big things. And I remember asking, so what? And she said, well, I just let go of having to do those things. It sounds easy. Of course, she was dying, so that probably made it a little easier, but it just reminds me of your insight, of what you uncovered, CJ. That, yeah, it's an idea that we have to do these things and we're attached to them. But then yeah, we could release all that. And let's see, Clark is saying there's an attachment to what is love and remorse that I could have been so much more present. Yes, all insights are usually they're usually accompanied by maybe a little bit of grief, because there comes the liberation, the insight. Oh my gosh, I don't need to be attached to these things, whatever these things are. That's a moment of liberation. And then there's the moment of, if only I could have known this sooner, how differently I might have done my life. I have those moments often as a parent or even as a grandparent of realizing something and then thinking, oh, I wish I had realized that. I could have helped or shared in that, in some particular way. Then acceptance and love of the experience that was. This is gone, and this is present when remembered again. Yes, yes. Oh, okay. And there's Lenny, who has to leave because it's too late for her. And Liz, yes, I don't know. I mean, I have my AirPods on, so the sound is very screechy for me too when somebody texts. And I have the notifications turned off, focus is on, do not disturb. Maybe Anissa can help me figure out why these sounds still come through when that's a text that I was receiving, some texts. So maybe you can tell me afterwards, Anissa, why that happens. Do you know?
We can go through it later.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. See, I'm telling you, she knows everything, this woman. Um, and loves to meditate besides. Yeah, so I think these teachings of Bardo can be super helpful to us when we're in a phase of not knowing, whether it's the phase of not knowing what will be for InsightLA. And I want to say again, for those of you who may not have been here before, that no matter what happens with InsightLA, I am committed to continuing this sitting group. Even, I may need to do it on my own personal Zoom, but we will continue at least until the end of the year. And then who knows? Who knows what will happen? But we're not going to stop the Sunday meetings anytime soon. And always, I teach this group with friends, Thomas Davis, Melissa McKay, occasionally Jocelyn Hitter. Sometimes Jocelyn and Thomas teach together. Other friends who, when I am traveling or in a retreat or whatever, they will come, and everyone is a good teacher, and everyone is I'm very grateful to each one of them who help out. So you can just reflect for a moment on, what kind of bardo are you in? Right now, of course, we're all in the bardo of hearing teachings. Then that will end in a few minutes, and we will be in the bardo of sharing together. But in the larger sense of your life, you may be going through some transition. Most of us are, much of the time in our lives. And, maybe not knowing if your job will continue, not knowing if InsightLA will continue, because honestly, some of us have devoted many, many years of our lives to being involved with this community. And it's a huge change to have it be suddenly uncertain. It's uncertain. Jack tells the story of being in the monastery with his teacher Ajahn Chah, and he said Ajahn Chah used to always say this expression that he can say in Thai, and I forget how it goes in Thai because it's a tonal language and I won't have the right tone, so I might say something inappropriate if I try to say it in Thai. But it means it's uncertain. It's uncertain. Do you know how to say that, Anissa? Yeah, it's uncertain. And he said Ajahn Chah would always say that. Sort of whatever was going on, if you asked a question, often he would just say, it's uncertain. And gradually, I've shared with you many times that my first teacher, the Korean Zen master, Reverend Sung San, Desan Sanim, his whole teaching to us at the beginning, our whole beginning meditation was learning how to access this state of uncertainty, of not knowing, the bardo of not knowing, and learn to rest in there, learn to rest in the mystery of that, the mystery of being. He gave us a koan, what am I? And then he would give us the answer, don't know. And at first it was so weird because we're conditioned our whole school lives to know, and don't know is not an acceptable answer when a teacher calls on you, right? But the deeper don't know, the deeper don't know. Where did I come from before I was born? Where are you going after you die? These deeper don't knows, deeper uncertainties. Learning to be at ease, to feel free in the midst of don't know mind, as he called it. He coined that phrase, which has become pretty popular. Learning to be at ease with the fear or the confusion that may arise in the face of really not knowing what's next in some realm of our lives. It can be with a divorce, it could be any kind of reason. In this case, the loss of a job for many of us. But learning to be at ease and to trust. And what are we trusting? You know, we used to have an expression that we used all the time when we were younger. And I don't know if it came from the Buddha. Some of you may know the reference. I'll have to look it up because it just popped into my mind. But we used to say, the expression was, when you give yourself to the Dharma, when you give your life to the Dharma, to these teachings of presence, of mindfulness, of awareness, of compassion, of joy, of equanimity, when you give yourself to the practice of these liberating teachings, then the Dharma will take care of you. I found that very reassuring, you know, that somehow that would happen. And in my mind, when I was younger, the Dharma, I guess, was sort of like God. I thought, well, God will take care of me in some way. But as I matured in the practice, I began to see it's the ability to be free. It's knowing how to free our hearts from states of fear and confusion and upset that is taking care of us. In other words, it's your own mind and your own heart that are taking care of you because you've done some training in consciousness. So that trust is really what the practice is about, and these teachings about the Bardo are about. You know, in the classic Tibetan Buddhist teachings of what happens in that period between dying and whatever is next, is that you have all kinds of images of different apparitions, you know, divine ones and hellish ones and beautiful ones and scary ones and wrathful deities, they're called, the deities that manifest fierce compassion. And part of the practice is to stay grounded in awareness, taking our seat in awareness itself. And you know, often when we meditate, I give the instruction it's based on Dogen Zenji's teaching of the backward step, but I like us to embody it. He taught it to do with your mind, but I find it's helpful to do it with my body too, to just move the body back ever so slightly, maybe just an inch or so that we're in a posture of receptivity, of receiving the moment, of receiving the breath, of receiving all the experiences, all the phenomena of this life. Instead of going out, leaning out toward anticipating the next moment, approaching experience with all our plans and agendas for what's supposed to happen, our expectations, etc., our concepts, all that stuff. That's, he famously said, when the self goes forward toward the myriad things, that is delusion. But when the myriad things, all the phenomena, all the experiences come forward and awaken the self, we notice them. They appear in our awareness. We see them. We receive them. He said, that's enlightenment. That's awakening. So these are some of the Bardo teachings that I want to share with you today. There's lots more where this came from, and I will continue to share in following weeks. But this is possibly good for now. Oh, there's one more thing in the chat. By the way, feel free to use the chat. We're very chat positive in this group. From Maryland, I thought, wow, next time I meditate, I will be in a completely different life and a completely different place. What will that be like? Now, there is the attitude of don't know mind, right? The genuine attitude in the practice of just discovery, of uncovering, of a kind of magical anticipation that is joyful. It's like, oh, wow. Thank you for that. Thank you, everyone who put, thank you, Clark. Thank you, CJ, for putting your experience in the chat. And anybody else, please feel free to add on.